This conference will now be recorded.
the approval of the town, now they're coming back and saying, the town, that what he did was improper. There's, a 2.5 foot move on the equipment isn't gonna make any difference at all to the neighbor to the west. If anything, it's gonna be more intrusive or visible because of the requirements that the code, I think, says that it has to be. So I would just think it's just ironic that he does everything he's supposed to do, and they're saying that he now has to do something different. So I'm all for the variance being provided to Mr. Zank and allowing him to proceed as it had already been approved and built.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Actually, I want to make one additional comment. The code in the town allows for a generator to be 5 feet from the neighbor's property. As I mentioned last time, that's much more intrusive, going to create more noise, and I think that the town code needs to be changed. In fact, from what I was told by the pool contractor, virtually every other town in this county has a 5-foot setback for pool equipment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Staff will now make final comments.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further presentation.
No, thank you. Do any members of the commission have any questions for staff, the applicant, or anyone else who has spoken on this item?
Yeah, when I have
Betty?
a question, when it says that the neighbor immediately to the west has a pool that encroaches upon the soil bed, when was that pool built? Because our codes have changed along the way. When was it, when that pool was built? Was it before we increased the setbacks?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with the construction pool on the neighbor's property.
Yeah, not sure.
I thought the reference was to the driveway of the neighbor's property,
Yes.
not a pool, Betty.
Well,
In actuality, the pool is encroaching on the setback. I have never made an issue with it.
Oh, it's
So
Oh,
is
yes.
the pool as well.
in addition, okay.
And that was done subsequent.
that's what I was
that was
referring to.
Subsequent
And I
to that.
wanted to know when the pool was built,
Right. I don't-
because when we redid the ordinances, there were those things which did not comply, but they were grandfathered. And that
Yeah,
is
right.
basically my question.
I do have a question for Corey. Um, Oh, sorry. It's my understanding that the pad does not come in compliance because of the flood zone issues from the county or the state. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. They're the federal flood regulations.
So that's independent of Ocean Ridge. This is going to have to be rectified before a completion certification is given as well.
That was the conversation that I had with the building official, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, Corey, regarding that. They're claiming that the permit was approved with that setback on it. But from what I read here was saying that, no, they requested a final site plan or final survey to be submitted with everything before it was approved, and that was never done. And the reason that the town didn't find out about this was because no inspection was requested. At the end, they had to get some engineer to go in there and verify that everything was done in accordance with the plan. So my question is, did the town approve the plan based on the setback, which is right now actually on the pad, or was it subject to final, approval based on the newly submitted plan, which was not submitted?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the agenda packet from from this meeting and the prior meeting does include a copy of the stamped approved plan from the town. And if I recall correctly, it includes a 6-foot setback shown on the drawing. The issue with the inspection, as I understand it from my conversation with the building official, is that the inspections, there we go. Thank you, Kelly. So that drawing was in the building permit set, shows a setback of, I believe it's 6 feet, and it was approved. The issue, as I understand it during construction, was that inspections weren't called for some elements of the work. And based on my conversation with the building official, as it relates to the location of the pool pad, or I'm sorry, the pool equipment pad, the inspector isn't looking for compliance with setbacks in the field. That's why they get a form board survey. My understanding is the form board survey wasn't provided in, at least when it was expected or in a timely manner from the town's perspective. So the issue of the setback not complying with the 10-foot requirement wasn't discovered until much later in the process. And as the applicant points out, after the equipment had been installed. So once it was discovered, and of course the setback shown on the approved plan is incorrect, that's when the issue was presented to the owner, and he was instructed that a variance would be required.
This is my pool contractor's assistant. I'd like to have her sworn in so that she can testify.
Can you stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good morning. I apologize for being behind schedule. I was out talking to the inspector on other projects we're working on, waiting for the owner of our company, Scott Lenz, to arrive. Both arriving tardy, unfortunately, with traffic, but no excuses. I understood the tail end of what you were speaking to, and Mr. Durrani's comments have been reviewed as well. A form board survey does not ever detail an equipment pad location. It is done to designate the forms of the structure of the concrete for the interior of the swimming pool. So with regards to whether or not there would have been any acknowledgement on a form board survey for pool equipment pad location, that's just never going to happen. With regards to the previous inspections as permitted, the setback, again, on the approved stamped engineered plans. We built to those plans. We built to those plans at every phase of all the inspections of the work, and did submit a subsequent revision for an as-built because there's been a subsequent modification to these originally permitted plans that was submitted in December. And it was at that time, it was an as-built. Okay, so the difference in the call out on the equipment pad location was never going to be exposed any sooner in the stage of construction. The final tie-in survey, which speaks to the elevations, the placement of all of the features within the office, within the property, even a little barbecue pad, is when you would find the delineation of the setback for the equipment pad at that time as well. And that is what has been disapproved, is the final tie-in survey. So we were ready to final, complete, and close out this permit. Pool property is beautiful. I hope that we're building to the standards of improvements in Ocean Ridge. At the same time, these statements are just out of sequence and not consistent with construction means and methods in a lot of municipalities, including Ocean Ridge. They should have been rejected when they were submitted. Manny, the zoning inspector that still does zoning inspections on plans I'm submitting this week and next week, and hope to continue to here in Ocean Ridge. He approved the zoning. It speaks to the setbacks. We built a plan. Okay, so I hope that that addresses some of the points, and I'm happy to answer additional questions as appropriate.
You say that the pads are not shown on the original plans, but are you not required to know what the setbacks, the legal setbacks in the individual town is? And Ocean Ridges are not the same as Boynton's or Boca's or anyone else's. So the pad wasn't shown, but it didn't have the required setback when it was built.
Yes, respectfully, the setback knowledge of the contractor is expected. And with regards to permitting engineered, signed and sealed plans to the building officials and to the zoning review process, it is verified. The town code for the town of Ocean Ridge here has been under revisions and modifications with regards to heavy equipment and electrical appliances like generators. The separation and spacing to detail the code is different. The remodel standards, if this property had had one wall remaining or been in a remodel state of new construction or as opposed to new construction, the setback requirements would have been different. That's the variance request because, again, how many properties in this community have pools with their pool equipment, even more obtrusive, much closer to property boundaries and lines, including the pools themselves with water safety. So I understand your position that at the time this project was in permit for a very long time. As a result of the home construction and mitigating traffic concerns with the construction of the pool while the home was being fixed, it became a much later phase. It was actually split from the original permit and became a secondary phase 2. And with the communications and how the town handled the splitting of the permits, the allocation of master permits and sub-permits, there was some confusion in the timeline and how it was going. So I came late to the phases, but since I've stepped in and reviewed as well the history that I wasn't privy to real time, but the subsequent engagements with Mr. Durrani Guy, many of them, lots of email correspondences, Lisa, a delight, unfortunately no longer here, but very helpful through the process. This is where we are today with regards to understanding the code. And again, we have many other projects and I can assure you they have 10-foot equipment setbacks.
I don't like putting generators in with pool setbacks. Generators have many restrictions as to where they can be placed in a yard.
5 feet from the property line.
But no, depending upon whether they're in the front yard or the side, they can't be in the front yard. If you read the rules and regulations, I just don't think that where a generator can be placed has any significance to where the pool equipment can be placed. I just want to separate those two.
Yeah, it's usually because of concern for related easements for access. In other municipalities, there's no designation whatsoever how far you have to be from a property line, not any delineation. In Delray, your adjacent community, you can have your pool equipment sitting on your fence.
I wouldn't want to be their neighbor.
I understand it's a lovely choice to live where we live, and the municipalities having very specific code to be followed is well respected and regarded, and I don't discount that whatsoever. We do have a lot of things to adhere to, not even at the municipality level, but as well. A lot of sub-communities, homeowners associations, additional overlay site plat maps and plans. This is why it gets reviewed by officials and is officially provided to us as an approved buildable plan. When I don't meet those codes on what I submit, they get commented. I have to correct them. I resubmit before I have an issued permit. This permit was issued as approved.
I have a question. What is your plan with regard to the FEMA height requirements? Because it was made clear by the town that they would not issue a permit without it, or certificate of.
Yeah, again, an interesting delineation on how the project was classified as new construction versus a remodel or renovation, a major renovation, and what the standards of code were being held to this specific site and property. I did some additional research into the FEMA. I looked into the VE zoning. I looked into the base flood elevation as compared to the first floor elevation. I looked at the topographical survey that was provided as part of the detail on the final tie-in survey as built. And to be completely transparent, it doesn't seem like there's a violation that would warrant a relocation or an elevation of the existing equipment. It would be only the mechanical components. So in other words, the filter, some of the non-electrically wired plumbing circulation pieces of equipment at that equipment pad are non-issue. It's not like it's going to float away as the concern. It was electrically charged in regards to what the building official was doing, and he gave us a very high above BFE requirement that doesn't seem consistent with FEMA, the ANSI standards, or what I'm seeing for the, not too long ago, 2019 revised designation of this specific area where Dr. Zenk's property is. So again, I know that wasn't what was being brought to the hearing as far as we're talking about setbacks, but that would be my response to that. I feel like the pool equipment as is built is safe to standards and should be approved for a final permit closeout on this project.
Mr. Chair, I just have to point out that the variance application before this board is only as to the setback. So the FEMA issue, the flood issue, is not part of the decision here today. They would need to request a deferral if they want to add that to the variance application. But at this point, the only decision is with regard to the setback of the equipment.
Although I do have a consideration as far as hardship goes, because if the pad has to be moved due to the FEMA, then there's no reason that the pad shouldn't be made to be in compliance with the 10-foot setback. However, if, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Lisa. But if Lisa's contention is the pad will meet the FEMA requirements and the pad does not have to be moved at all, then there is an issue, I think, before this committee that we've been put in a position to, in between the town stamping approval and he said, she said, they should have known, they should have known, we should have known as well as a town. And now you're asking the Board of Adjustments, who doesn't really have the capacity to oversee other departments within this town. We're asked to look at individual properties and their compliance with the ordinances as they are approved by our commission. So I think it does have an effect on my opinion and ultimately the decision for Dr. Zenk.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the problem is you have an application in front of you that's just asking for one variance, and that is a setback variance. So while I understand and can appreciate that if they have to move the equipment up because of FEMA regulation, this board may take that into consideration as to their decision. But at the same time, the criteria set out in the code as to what you need to find as to the variance as it's requested. So if you want to defer this matter again to get a final ruling from the town's building official, that would be, I believe, a new building official we have under contract, we can do that. But unfortunately, because the application before you today is only as to the setback, and you're supposed to focus on what the request is as applied to the existing criteria from a legal standpoint, then whether or not they have to move it up, elevate it for FEMA standards is actually a separate legal issue. That's just, I'm just saying from a legal perspective.
If I may, I believe that would probably clarify because let's say if the FEMA require you to raise the pad, if you know that in advance now, you have to do that regardless, then I think it would be easier for us to decide whether the setback is still necessary. But if you have to do it, you're going to change it anyway. And then giving you a setback, there's going to be a setback for the future when you do comply with the FEMA, then you don't have to move it. But if you do have to move that anyway, then maybe you want to find out if you can get some kind of variance from the FEMA or whatever as far as what the location is. If they would allow you to keep it what it is, then it's going to be easier for us to decide here whether that is cost effective or whatever that you move it. So I believe this is something you have to get that answer first before you come here trying to get the setback. And then if you get the FEMA's Obviously, acceptance, that's what it is good. Then I think it's gonna be a lot easier for us to decide whether now for the just complying with the code, you have to take everything and move it away. But if the FEMA is going to require you to do it regardless, the only thing we're gonna be giving you today, either giving you or denying you, is that once FEMA give you that, then you can still go ahead and set it what it is with the new setback that we approve, or whatever variance we give you.
But Lisa, wouldn't there be a much bigger cost associated with moving the pad as opposed to even if you have to elevate it?
Again, the concern about the pool equipment location and elevation and the standards for FEMA.
I can't get this on record.
I'm sorry, what?
I need her on the microphone.
Okay, I apologize. So, yeah, as I understand it, the FEMA elevation requirements pertain to mechanical equipment. When you read through the language of 322.41, I think that Dr. Zank, you submitted some FEMA pertain documentation recently. I don't know, has that been reviewed prior to my late arrival? Was there a discussion point already made to that? So I do think that, it's a technicality that we're discussing legal review of the pool equipment setback, delineating it differently. We're talking about a pool that was built. We're talking about the swimming pool equipment on this owner's property. It's an elevation, it's a setback, it's a wiring. There's a lot of code that gets inspected as per this, construction process. So do we have to move it at all? Would we simply raise the mechanical components? Again, there was some discussion about making it more visible because we're bringing it high and it's high. The pieces that are high don't really have to be elevated from a mechanical operation standpoint. So we're talking about maybe even able to do proper code, hurricane rated sub pad to the mechanical components and pulling them up for an electrical elevation. Do I think it should be required that a FEMA variance would be warranted? Yes, I can deal with that if it's necessary, but the big issue wasn't raised about the BFE until after it started being scrutinized where our equipment is again. So it's because of a sequence of events that both things are now being so heavily scrutinized. And as a result, yes, the expense to physically move all of that equipment, I think pictures were submitted. You can see the manifold as it's stubbed up to a freshly poured concrete pad that the equipment is then set on. How many lines you can count in that raceway of plumbing that's coming to properly filter and circulate and run the equipment that is facilitating that pool is a lot of plumbing and a huge expense. PVC pipe, anybody does anything with a piece of PVC, you can appreciate that the costs are just as much affected by inflation. At this time, the cost to do it significantly more than even a year ago. So this time lag is also extremely burdensome financially. So I do hope that we can quickly do what's necessary to have an understanding of what the town wishes to do with this pool equipment as built.
Let me ask you a question while you are there. You're talking about, you don't have to change all the pipes, everything. All you have to do is just modify the last section of it to come in 4 foot away. You don't have to go and redo. The piping is underground. Has nothing to do with the setbacks.
So you're suggesting that we're gonna have 4 feet of additional PVC sitting above ground over to a
Or
new
right
location?
next to the pad underground.
Underground, and there's curve requirements on total dynamic head calculation as to how many 90, 45s. Electrical conduit, even more so, requires code compliance on sweeps. It's not as simple as just pick it up and move it like a Lego block. Oops, that doesn't go there. Let's put it over here. I mean, can it be done? Yes, but it is extensive work to do.
Well, the question here is not that you have to do Lego block move from here to there. The question here is somebody actually made a mistake here. And you're trying to put finger on the building department, building tariff department, provide with all this evidence that no inspection was called in, nothing was done. Email was sent in that you
Can I
have to
speak to
comply.
that? Can I speak to that? I don't think it
Let
came.
me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Okay. So then we're talking about here to moving stuff and everything else. And when we're talking about go and find out if FEMA is going to approve you, because the town is saying if the FEMA doesn't do it, if they don't give you, exemption, they are going to make you go ahead and raise the thing up.
Absolutely.
So would you accepting a conditional variance subject to FEMA doesn't require anything, and if FEMA require any changes, then the setback is going to be 10 foot?
So, no, I understand that if there's a variance granted for that equipment to stay where it's currently located, that we do need to confirm that FEMA is also comfortable with the elevation that it's at. With regards to the comment that did not come up, I saw on the bullet points that Mr. Guy submitted. In fact, the perimeter plumbing engineered letter for the inspection that he references as having been not called in by the contractor was in fact called in on the same day that the rough electrical underground. In most municipalities, this is done by 2 different inspectors, and in your case, it was as well. Lou, who works for, I believe, Hybrid as a third-party inspection service, came on the very same day and reviewed the electrical underground conduit and approved it. On that same said day, there was an inspection of the perimeter piping lines, which run parallel in the same trenches to the same places for the electrical wiring alongside the plumbing. And the Mark Ridiak, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, he's not somebody I ever had a rapport with, disapproved for failure to access due to locked gates. Okay, there were no gates locked around this property that I'm familiar with, and if there were, it's ironic that on the same day we were passing a same field inspection by 2 different inspectors. So, because of that disapproval, we have a lot of photographs, it was well documented, the engineer of record reviewed all of the video and photography documentation and provided a letter to state that it was built per the approved plans and per Florida Building Code. And that's why that letter came into play, not because we failed to call in an inspection. So I do want to clarify that point. It's just a reputation thing to go on the record, if you don't mind.
But I understand the engineer who did the final approval and everything, again, he did not confirm the setbacks in his letter were complied with.
It's nothing, again, the setbacks are evaluated at the beginning and at the end. That's it. You get a zoning approval inspection of your plans when they're issued, they get approved, you build from those plans. At the final tie-in survey, it goes back for a final zoning review. At the form board zoning reviews it, it would never have any relevance to the pool equipment. That was my clarifying point earlier. Pool equipment setbacks are not verified at a form board survey. Form board surveys are performed when we're shooting permanent in-ground concrete to ensure that the water edge from electrical, from property boundaries, all those setbacks for the pool itself is conforming to the requirements as per the approved plans, equipment aside. Final tie-in survey delineates, again, all of the details to include the placement of the equipment pad, which is done upon completion. So I don't think that, the FEMA should have a bearing on the variance request. And I would speak, I believe, confidently, I should just defer that if FEMA says that this pool equipment needs to be raised per the recently, within the last handful of years, revised delineation for this property and where it measures to the BFE and the FFE and the necessary inches, feet, whatever, it's been a few different times told where it needs to be. And even that confusion in and of itself will need clarification, and I would be happy to do the research with FEMA to do that.
Okay, one quick follow-up here.
I'd like to ask the attorney a question. Can a motion to approve be made contingent upon final approval from FEMA?
No.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a question before we start approving it. If we approve it, and if they don't get approval from FEMA or don't let that run by, will that change our rating with FEMA so that our flood insurance for everybody in town goes up? I mean, we've just been put into a different category recently.
It's really a question for your building official, who is your administrative official under the FEMA flood plan rules for the town. But my understanding from him is anytime we do something that doesn't comply with the FEMA regulations, we do threaten that rating that keeps the flood insurance rates down in the town.
And that means that everybody in town's flood insurance would go up.
Potentially, I can't answer that for sure.
We're looking to maintain compliance. That's the verification.
Eddie, I'm a member of the PPI committee, and I believe you are correct in that assumption, but I think you have to check it out.
Well, but I would rather check it out first and rather than be,
We just moved from a lower category to a higher category, which means everyone's flood insurance
that's right,
is reduced, I think, by $28.
that is correct.
And you're absolutely correct. I think we need to check to see whether it will change our FEMA requirement.
And make sure that it's done properly. That's my feeling. I would rather know that the whole thing's gonna go through properly rather than piecemeal.
But if you, Betty, if you do it conditionally, it's really not piecemeal. Because-
I conditionally sometimes just runs on and on and on is my problem.
Can you scroll to page 4 on this that you have on the screen? I want to read that to you. The bottom of page 4. Equipment for pools, spas, water features shall be permitted below the elevation required in section R 322.2 or R 322.3, provided it is elevated to the extent practical and anchored to prevent flotation and resist flood forces, and is supplied by branch circuits that have grounded circuit interrupted protection, which we do. So this FEMA issue is not an issue. It's a non-issue.
The town's saying that if the FEMA doesn't meet the FEMA, they're not gonna approve the final on this permit to close it. So how you're saying that FEMA is, who is gonna make that exemption? This was a, in particular case that has to be, granted by FEMA.
Maybe the new building official, it goes to one person.
If you speak, you need to speak in the microphone, please.
Look, I mean, the truth of the matter is the dysfunction in the building department led to this. I mean, if there was a experienced crew that was following this project from beginning to end, I mean, look, there's a learning curve in everything that you do. And if you've done a number of these, then honestly, this should have been picked up way before they came to going for a fine. I mean, it's unfair to these people. They've put in the work, they've done their job. They worked on an approved set of plans. And at the end, they come back and make a comment. I mean, this is nonsense.
But it's like changing the rules of a race once the race has begun. It's not the duty of the board of I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. It's like changing the rules of the race once the race started. It's not the duty of this body to oversee the building department. You're asking us to change the rules in order for you to become compliant with our ordinances, and they're not the same. We're trying to find a ground because undue financial hardship, as you had brought out, it's not part of approval or disapproval for the Board of Adjustments. It should not be considered, actually, and that's spelled out in our guidelines. So if, as been pointed out, if the pad has to be raised, if the pad has to be adjusted or moved, then we said, well, you need to be in compliance. If we're saying, if FEMA finds that the pad is sufficient, then we may give contingent approval that we would pass a variance for you. So we're trying to find some medium ground here. I can't undo what the building official did or didn't do, at what time, construction, did they call for inspection or not at the appropriate time. It is what it is, and that's what we have to
I
deal
agree
with.
with you, that's irrelevant. The reality is they had worked off of an approved set of plans.
I understand.
Who's gonna know the code in this town better than the building department?
I understand that as well.
I mean, how can you expect contractors that work, I mean, there are no contractors that are exclusive to Ocean Ridge.
I
I
hear you.
mean, these guys are trying to make a living. I mean, you're beating them up for no reason.
Mr. Chair, if I may, responsibility for compliance with the code ultimately is on either the designers and the contractors that are building within the town. The role of a building department and a building official is to confirm compliance with the code. When cities miss things, which happens, it happens, they miss things, they're not responsible, right? They're responsible if it's something that's not clearly written in the code, then they're responsible. But when it's an ordinance, the only group that can authorize an ordinance to be changed is the town commission, or by variance, this board. So responsibility is truly upon the property owner and who they hired to do the job. It happens, things get missed, and then unfortunately it comes here to see if there are circumstances that are particular to grant the variance. So yes, the town missed it on the initial plans, but ultimately the responsibility falls back on who you hired to do a job.
Thank you.
And I go a step farther here. It's the responsibility is the engineer who designed this thing to start with and put that 6 foot there. He should have known that actually the setback in the town of Ocean Beach is 10 foot. So if they put in 6 there, that's when they tried. I don't think that was intentionally trying to kind of sneak it in or something, but that was not the case. It was obviously they had to comply with the code of what the code requires.
And to your point, there's a statement in the engineering letter that said, the outlined above are in substantial compliance. I'm not even sure what that means.
Well, I asked that the last time, what is substantial compliance?
Yeah. So, thank you. Any other comments, concerns, questions? I now declare this quasi-judicial hearing closed. We'll now proceed with comments and deliberation by the commission.
I personally would rather see them go to FEMA first and then let us consider whether we give a variance. But until FEMA makes a decision, I don't see how we can vote on it.
I agree with Betty. I think this is a question first has to come out from FEMA. If the FEMA say, leave it where it is, then for us to decide, should they move it for the setback? Or the other alternative is, if you don't want to repeat this thing again, we go in with a conditional approval on this one, saying that if the FEMA requires you to change, then whatever we agree to, for variance, it's gone. It's not there. The only way we would give you the conditional approval is that if the FEMA doesn't make you change, then you can leave it where it is.
Would you like to put that in form of a motion?
I should. Yes, I could. All right. What I would say with the motion is just basically approving the variance requested, subject to FEMA not requiring any changes. You can.
I would like to change that.
Okay.
Sorry. I think it should be subject to them getting final FEMA approval, whatever that is. So that would give them the variance for allowing the 6 foot setback on the proviso that they continue getting approval by FEMA. So that this whole project can be approved and given a certificate of completion. So regardless of what FEMA says, it's that they complied with FEMA to continue.
I think the word contingent should be placed in that motion.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that FEMA can't, I mean, they may be able to make the changes that FEMA requests without changing the pad at all, like you had suggested, like Lisa had suggested. So that shouldn't enter into it, just the fact that they go forward and get FEMA's approval.
But I don't
So
think that's required from us, because all we are doing today is basically saying that the setback, and we're not conditioning the FEMA, is part of the permitting process anyway. We're not deciding on the FEMA anyway.
No, we aren't, we're just giving
But the way
a
I'm
condition.
saying is, the way on my motion is that If the FEMA is happy with what's in there, we're happy with it. But if the FEMA questioning it, you have to raise it anywhere, then raise it and move it.
I agree with you.
But FEMA's requirements may not require anything to do with the pad. That's the thing. It may be just the equipment itself that you can raise without changing the location or the depth of the pad. That's what I'm thinking of.
I want to know what FEMA says before I make any firm decision. That's.
Well, then
where I'm
that's
coming
not,
from. I don't know.
that's
Well,
not granting the variance then, per
No,
se,
that
if you
is
want
not
to know.
granting the
That's
variance
not.
until we hear what FEMA has to say about it. Because they might go along for 2 years before they call FEMA in, and we have a flood, and all kinds of things happen.
Chairperson, the motion was not seconded,
No,
so I would like to make a new motion,
okay.
that we table our decision contingent upon receipt of approval from FEMA.
Okay. I will go along with that.
As to their determination
Right.
of the pad.
But wouldn't it be more prominent to go forward with the variance today, subject to FEMA's approval? Then we don't have to come back to this analysis again for the third time. And we're moving forward and we're not leaving the poor homeowner, you know.
I'm sorry, I agree. Yes.
right? I mean, we have to be conclusory here today. This is the second hearing. The facts really aren't changing. And it would be best if we were able to come to some conclusion.
But when do they get FEMA's approval? And if they don't get FEMA's approval, does everybody's insurance go up?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think we need to get with the current contractual building official to have it re-reviewed, to look at it from the FEMA regulation standpoints, the Florida Building Code, to see if any other changes need to be made to the pad. It sounds like what y'all are willing to do is to grant the variance as long as nothing else needs to be changed with regard to the pad.
That's correct.
I believe that's the
That's
opinion.
correct, yeah.
So perhaps then the motion is to grant it, subject to a certificate of completion from the building official for all other purposes.
Does the building official act on behalf of FEMA?
The building official is our floodplain administrator, so the building official is the one who determines whether the FEMA guidelines have been satisfied.
Okay.
I believe that's pretty much what we're talking.
So without specifying FEMA, just putting it all on the building inspector. I like that. I think that's a good
Yep.
motion.
Okay, could you repeat that one more time for the
All
time?
right, so I would make the motion that we approve the variance for the 6-foot setback, subject to compliance with the other requirements of the building inspector,
Official.
building official for completion.
Is there a second?
I second that.
We will now take a final vote on item number 1. Can you please take a roll?
Member Marsali?
Yes.
Member Cody?
Yes.
Member Sloat?
Yes.
Member Bingham?
Yes.
And Chair Hendon?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, much better. So, well, we have item number 2. Okay. So we move on to item number 2, which is, please. Can you read please read the agenda item?
An application submitted by Albert Knorr for a parcel of property located at 6107 North Ocean Boulevard, North Florida, 33435, requesting a variance from the provisions of the Land Development Code, Chapter 64 zoning, Article 1, District Regulations, Section 64(1)K, 1B, RSC Single Family Residential Estate Districts regarding the minimum lot area and dimensions to permit a lot of 79.12 feet rather than the required 100-foot lot size width. This property is located at 6107 North Ocean Boulevard.
The proceedings are now called to order on agenda item number 2. At this time, any ex parte communication should be either disclosed by identifying the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communications took place, or any correspondence be provided to the town clerk and made part of the public record. In addition, each member of the commission may identify the existence of any investigations or site visits he or she has conducted, or any expert opinions received, and to disclose any conflicts of interest on this matter.
No communication.
Betty?
No,
I've had no communication.
No communication other than to visit the property where no one was present, other than myself.
And no communication. We will then proceed with the hearing on this matter. Will the town clerk please swear in the witnesses?
Anybody here wishing to speak on the item, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please, when you come forward, please state your name and address clearly for the record and whether or not you've been
You want
sworn.
this now?
You may call your
Yeah, please.
We'll call you up.
Oh, okay.
The town staff will now make its presentation on this matter.
Mr. Chairman, Corey O'Gorman, Town Planner. A memo was sent out in the agenda packet regarding this item that initially when it was submitted and an advertisement was placed, it was placed incorrectly for an incorrect section of the code and wasn't complete in terms of the all of the items that need to be considered by the Board of Adjustment. This would be a variance for lot width, as was indicated in the application and the advertisement. However, rather than the 80 feet that was indicated in the advertisement, it is 100 feet. There's also need in the RSC district for a variance to the 20,000 square foot lot size requirement. This site is approximately 13,800 square feet. So the recommendation is to allow for proper advertisement so that the Board of Adjustment can have a proper hearing. We're requesting that you'll defer this to the April meeting. I have met with the owner and the applicant to review the issues, and we're taking the steps that are necessary to be sure that everything is included in the agenda and the application for your consideration at your next meeting.
Thank you. The applicant will now make its presentation on the matter.
Do you want?
Okay.
Pardon?
Did the applicant?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
they did?
So we're gonna hear this now?
No.
No? No. Okay, so,
Well, you're here.
okay.
Mr. Knorr, if you wanted to just tell the Board of Adjustments that you agree with the continuance to the April meeting, I think that would suffice.
I do continue till
Okay.
next month. Absolutely. Thank you.
Hold on, because the architect's here as well, we'd like to speak in.
Yes. This is our architect, Greg Jones, and he won't be here next month, but he can be here today to say a few words on our behalf, please.
Good morning, Greg Jones, Gregory Jones Architecture, 636 East Atlantic Avenue. I'm the project architect of record on the proposed development on 6107 North Ocean. I will not be in the country on the next scheduled meeting. I wanted to be able to say that during the due diligence period, the discrepancy or the conflict was noticed on my part. It was a communication at a later date with Mr. Gorman, Manny Palacio, Guy Durrani, and Lisa Burns, where I brought it up to the attention that even though the zoning map had classified the area or the property, the subject property, as RSE, it did not meet the criteria, both in lot width and lot coverage. In trying to get a confirmation on how to proceed on the development of the property, it was dictated to us, my firm and myself individually, on various occasions, that the RSE classification and its zoning restrictions would need to be followed for this non-conforming sized lot. The negative for us, which we abided with, was the lot coverage percentage of 32%. RSF, which it's closer in size in both width and square footage coverage, would have allowed us to have a lot coverage of 35%. So we were on a smaller footprint property, designed it to a smaller lot coverage calculation that is meant for larger properties. And so we're in conformance with both setbacks, height restrictions involving finished floor elevation. It's an interesting lot because we have frontage both on A1A and Ocean in the back, two different varying wide range of height difference there. So we proceeded, and the proposed construction documents that are in for review the project has been designed to those restrictions. Also, a later communication a couple of months ago from Manny Palacio, when it came up, a note on the file that came directly to me that it was non-conforming as an RSF zoned lot. I communicated back to Manny that it's zoned as RSE, and went back over the communications that he and I had regarding this lot, and he came back and said, "You're absolutely right. It's supposed to be RSE," and I do remember all the qualifications that we put on the proposed development. I wanted to be able to express that, as I will be out of the country and won't be able to be in communication. And the other adjacent properties, I believe there's probably 10 properties in that area that are in the same conflict as far as being zoned RSE, and they do not meet the width or lot or size of square footage size of the RSE classification.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is it because it's non-conforming? Because when they split the lot, they actually didn't confirm the two lots? Is that the case?
As far as this particular property is concerned?
No, it was split from the one on the other side of Old Auction, long time ago.
That might have been that might have
Maybe
been.
it's non-conforming.
And the communication back to me was there would be a because of this particular consideration, or the consideration of a variance would be granted, because otherwise nothing would be able to be developed on the lot because it doesn't meet the criteria of either.
Have you all checked in to see how you can make it a conforming lot? Which is requires a lot more, a lot less.
You would have to purchase the properties on either side. Those are already developed, and you would make those non-conforming properties even more non-conforming.
I'm just asking.
So unfortunately, if they decided to take the road out and reconnect it to the lot that has already been purchased, and I think it's in for development, that would have been one way. As far as this is a perfect example of the horse has gotten out of the barn and we're trying to close the door. The prudent thing in being down in this area for the last 40 years, dealing with municipalities all up and down the coast, and certainly Ocean Ridge has challenges and its interesting conditions to be able to make the proposed project move forward. And we've had a real great relationship with the town over the years. I have over the years, and we've usually come to a conclusion that is reasonable. And we look forward to that same type of consideration, both from our end of meeting the more restrictive design guidelines on this particular property in this condition, and also the potential for the variance granting, so that we make the best out of a situation that is, we find ourselves involved in.
May I add something, please? Sure. Since we're here and we're coming back next month, I just want to show, if we can, I have an overhead, Kelly?
No.
Please? This.
Bruce, can I go?
Put that up there. Right there. Let me officially, Al Noor, 6107 North Ocean Boulevard. Look at the overhead, please. As you can see, from Corinne Street going north to Anna, you'll see all those homes are really more single family. The only home that may be considered single family estate would be the home on the corner of Corinne, on the northeast corner of Corinne. That's a much larger lot. All the other homes are basically single family, lot size, almost 80 feet in width and 10,000 square feet in size. I've blackened in, you can see where our lot is in those Corinnes. That's our vacant lot. And if you look from Anna Street north to Ocean Avenue, those are RSE homes for sure. So I'm not asking for any special treatment in any way. All I'm saying is I want to be able to enjoy my property like my neighbors and have the ability to build on it. And I just want to show you that, just give you a little preview of what we're doing. If we could put these up, Kelly, please. Here's renderings of the home. This is facing east, facing the ocean. This is the back of the home. And this is facing west off of A1A. You know, and we've come a long way here. This process we started almost a year ago. We've been in front of planning and zoning. We've been in front of all of you, I think at least once. I'm losing track. Staff has come and gone. You know, we have, we've complied with everything that we've asked to do. We've spent probably at this time in excess of $250,000 in site work, windows, doors, you name it, we've done it. Architect, revisions upon revisions. We were asked to shorten the driveway. We did that by 24 inches. So we've done our due diligence. We've done our homework. We've complied. Previously, we knew that we didn't have to have pilings. And recently, we found out we do need to have pilings. So of course, we will comply with that, you know, but all I want to do is build. And I want to stay within the guidelines. But, you know, I previously owned 6103 North Ocean Boulevard. I sold that in February of 22. And that lot size is identical to this lot size that we want to build on. And 6102 North Ocean Boulevard is identical to 6103 in lot size. You know, I mean, if I could make it wider and longer, I would, but this is what we have. And this home is fits in beautifully with the other homes on the block. It'll bring value to that street. It's a special street, you know, so we're not trying to do anything other than build and be productive. So I hope when we come back next month that we can all come to some kind of conclusion within the guidelines, you know, of this town. Yes?
Can I give a bit of history on those lots? Originally, all those lots were part and parcel of the houses on the ocean.
Right.
And when they changed some of the ordinances, they allowed the lots to split off. And that's why they're not non-conforming, well, they're non-conforming. And I thought at the same time, they made regulations to allow the lots which had been garages or, I hate to use the word servants' quarters or whatever,
Right.
on that side of Old Ocean. So none of those, and I thought those were grandfathered in. Might just take a look at that.
Right, well, you're going back to when Mr. Joa was here. The
Oh,
Joa
really?
family. Right. Am I correct, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, that was really back in the early time of when Ocean Ridge was founded.
That's right, but I thought when they wrote the restrictions on properties, they made some kind of allowances in the ordinances.
Well, I'd like to know if we have any information.
I don't know, that was my understanding.
Right, but I'd like to know when it was zoned RSE, because these other homes are more like RSF.
Mhm.
So I've tried to do my research. I found one map similar to what we put up before that said 2008 on it. But the home that we lived in was, construction began in 2006. It was completed in 2008. So I don't know when if they applied for a variance then, or if they just were able to build without that stipulation. But, again, I'm just trying to do what we're trying to do here, and it's kind of frustrating. And I certainly can sympathize, sir, with what you said earlier about, the building department does their thing and planning and zoning does their thing. But I think, to avoid these kinds of situations, which we just witnessed with this prior case, there should be continuity that all these departments can sit together and review something when it's, potentially could create a problem like we're dealing with today. And I mean, I don't want this to be a problem. I'm a problem solver, not a problem maker. So with that, I thank you, and I look forward to seeing your smiling faces next month.
Yes.
Thank you.
For the record, I just wanted to summarize that the development order was approved for this project, the way it was designed. We do have that in hand. We see this as more of a potentially administrative variance, so that we'll be able to proceed as designed. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Can I make a public comment?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, please identify in the 3 minutes to speak.
My name's Todd Pappas, is 6073 Old Ocean. So I live directly across the street from the rear elevation of Mr. Nar. And I am totally familiar with the issues of the street and problems. The Old Ocean between Anna and Corrine is quite frankly a gem of Ocean Ridge. And I believe that any improvements that are made to that street are only good and increase property value and aesthetics. And that's basically all I wanted to say. I'm not going to be here next month, but I wanted to say I'm in total support of his variance and believe that, there's multiple people that will have this problem. So I would appreciate it if you'd approve it when it comes time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, what I will recommend, ultimately it's up to the town, is that we have our zoning official be present for the April meeting so he could provide additional information about the conversations that were had with Mr. Nars for the initial application process and development review, so you have that additional background information. And if you recall, this is similar to, unfortunately stepped out, Mr. Papa's came forward to the Board of Adjustment previously. He was requesting 5 variances at that time. Those were denied However, 2 of them, the same 2 that Mr. Narge are seeking, were denied without prejudice. Because the town, I believe this board at that meeting recognized that because these 10 properties are zoned RSE, it creates a hardship for them because none of them currently in their current configuration satisfy the total lot size and the lot width. And those are the variants that Mr. Narge is seeking. And so I think what was done through the development process was to try to design something so it satisfied all other criterias, and the building official and our zoning official recognized that these 2 were problematic in these areas.
Yes, there were additional issues with this
Yes,
property.
yes, yes.
Any other public comment?
Yes, can I speak real quick too? How you doing?
Absolutely, please,
Steve
again.
Jersey. I'm working with Mr. Nar and Judith on the project as well. I just want to put into record that we did go for permits. We did have an approval, just like Greg Jones mentioned. We submitted our documentations. We did our due diligence. We were working through getting all the comments. There's comments on there to get the final permit approved. One of them was to get a DEP permit. So we submitted all that documentation, spent a lot of money on permitting. We got approved. So the DEP approved it. We passed all the FEMA regulations. So everything is, the plans were done accordingly. So everything's fully approved on the project. We did ask Guy Durante, the former building official, what should we do here? He did grant us an early start, but we just decided to not start just until we finally got final approvals on everything. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Nick Lembo, and we live across the street at 6507 Old Ocean. I just would like to say that I understand the issues. I'm a builder in New York City and a graduate architect. As I understand them, I think they're perfectly reasonable requests, and as a neighbor, we support them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Nobody else? Okay,
Shall I make a motion for continuance? Would you like that?
yes, please.
So I move that we make a motion to continue the NAR application for a variance until our April board meeting.
Can you add that we would request that
And we would request that the
plant.
gentleman from zoning be in attendance at that meeting as well. Thank you.
Second. Could you please take roll?
Member Asali?
Yes.
Member Bingham?
Yes.
Chair Hinden?
Yes.
Member Cody?
Yes.
Member Swett?
Yes.
The motion passes. Meeting adjourned.
Well done. Can't wait till next month.